أجمعين. If you remember last week, we went over the incident of your role models, and we learned that from the baby who spoke at an infant age. It was a miracle. It wasn't a prophet. It wasn't anyone we even know his name. But we know that it was a child at the time of the children of Israel, Muslim family, and his mother made supplication to that. For example, when she saw a very wealthy person, she thought that maybe that's who I want my son to grow up to be like, to emulate this man and have set high standards for her son. And yet her son was suckling on his mother, and the Prophet ﷺ even was holding his finger like this to show it wasn't metaphorical, and got off of his mother and said, no, I wish not to be like him. So we learned from that an outward appearance in our role models is not really what we should be looking for to define success. I want to make that very clear. A lot of times I could tell you, name me the top 10 most successful people you know of our time. I doubt a single one of you would have named one of your imams. Nobody. Literally no one. And that's because you're thinking like, well, he's an imam. But in Allah's view, this imam may be miles ahead of everyone else in terms of their success in the dunya. You may have named so many women that make it on these successful magazines and whatnot, but none of you, well, some of you may have, because a lot of time we idolize our parents, but who would have said their mother or their grandmother who made sacrifices to raise these generations? And in Allah's view, that may be something so much better off than someone who is on magazine covers and whatnot. Today we're going to be talking about a particular narration that will show you oppression and justice. And this is very important because we have to learn as Muslims that these are two of the worst things that a person can lack in implementing being just with the people around them, and indulge in oppressing people around the world. And make no mistake, this happens all across, all throughout your life, from a young age to an older age. And you'll see with this narration from Musnad Imam Ahmad. The Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned in a narration about the hairdresser, the hairdresser of Pharaoh's daughter. The hairdresser of Pharaoh's daughter. I'll start the narration and then we'll continue it after the salah, because I think it already made adhan or another minute or two. The Rasul ﷺ, while he was in the Isra wal Mi'raj, when he was in the night journey, he was actually passing by Al-Jannah, and he smelled a fragrance that smelled so beautiful. He asked Jibreel, he said, Jibreel, what's that smell? And Jibreel responded, he said, this is the smell of the hairdresser for the daughter of Pharaoh. The hairdresser of the daughter of Pharaoh. So the Rasul ﷺ said, what about her? He said, when she was combing her hair, when she was combing the hair of Pharaoh's daughter, she actually dropped the comb. It was this like long wooden, or it was sometimes made of metal, this comb. It's called a midra. And so she dropped it, and like any other Muslim, that sometimes when they do something, they say Bismillah, and they pick it up. So she said that. Now you have to understand something in how conniving this little girl was, by the way. Maybe she wasn't so little, but she had, she's living a lap of luxury, if you will. So she said, who are you referring to? She's talking to the hairdresser. She said, are you talking about my father? Because you said in the name of Allah, in the name of the Lord. So she said, no, my Lord and your father's Lord. My Lord and your father's Lord. She's got guts, by the way. Because at the time of Pharaoh, as you know throughout the story of Musa, you learn even in the man who came to give Musa's advice, Allah says about him that he was Muslim, but he was Muslim in sir, he was Muslim in secret, because anyone who was found to be Muslim at the time of Pharaoh was killed, was executed, and in very crazy ways, burned alive, and some of them were tortured, some of them were chopped their limbs off and whatnot. So his daughter says, should I tell him? Should I tell my father what you just said? Yani, in the name of your Lord and his Lord, you're saying my father has a Lord and my father's not your Lord? You see, you have to understand something very much so. She has a choice to make right now. She knows that she's going to be chopped liver. She's dead. If she does not confess to or buckle and go down to her knees and start begging her, no, 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 please don't tell your father. I didn't mean to say that. You know, just keep this between us. It was a mistake. You know, I just heard the da'wah of Musa and Harun and whatnot. It was a mistake. Here's the thing, though. Had she done that, you live a life of being blackmailed your entire life. That's what happens in these political positions. And so the moment somebody has dirt on you, they start choosing to blackmail you to get what they want. That's the way that politics you move up a lot of times. Not all of it, by the way, because you see the quite opposite, which we'll show in the second version. Inshallah, we will have time. So nonetheless, she says, she responds, she said, yeah. She said calmly, she said, if you want, she said, yeah, tell him. So she went and told her father, and Pharaoh brought her forth, and he said to her, he said, do you have another Lord instead of me? This is what she asks, he asks the hairdresser. She said, yes, my Lord and your Lord is Allah. This is in front of the biggest oppressor that ever stood foot on the face of this planet. And this woman, who we do not know her name, stands in front of him and says, yes, she speaks the truth for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal. He then ordered that a large copper-shaped cow would be heated up, and that's one of the ways that he used to torture people. He had this massive oven, if you will, in the shape of a cow, and it was hollow on the inside, and they would light a massive fire underneath it, and he ordered that her children, her sons, be brought forth, and that they be thrown inside of this copper cow. So she said, I have just one request, to show him that she is not afraid of this oppressor. She's standing up for al-haq, justice. So she says, I have one last request. He says, what's that? She said that you collect my bones and my son's bones and put them into one dress. What does that mean? And then burn us. What does that mean? Is that after you decide to kill us, that you take us all together and you wrap us up in that same, because in Muslims we cover the deceased with a white cloth. Simple thing. So she said that you cover us all and put us in the same grave. That's what her request was. And then he says to her, he says, you have the right to ask for that. He said, okay. And then he ordered her sons to be brought so that they were thrown in her hands, each one, and then they reached her baby suckling child. He's still breastfeeding, by the way, this child. And the baby, so at this point, she got a little nervous because she understood that this is for the sake of Allah. She understood that there's nothing bad that can come out of this. It's hard to believe that, though. That requires a phenomenal amount of iman, of faith, to stand in front of an oppressor who's got your kids. And why is this example so important? Because the Prophet, are there other people in history that stood up against oppressors? 100% yes. Then you have to ask yourself, why did Allah Azza wa Jal choose this narration for us to know about it? Because one of the most difficult things to do for a mother is to watch her own children die. Not just some car accident, that she's watching them be murdered in front of her. Let alone, by the way, a breastfeeding child. Because there's no closer connection in the world. By the way, you can check this out. Psychologists and those breastfeeding nurses and doctors and lactation consultants, they'll tell you this. Absolutely. This is the tightest connection in the human race, is a breastfeeding child and his mother or her mother. And so here's this child in her arms. So now it hit her a little. It's a little difficult that you're going to take your kid, who's only a few months old, breastfeeding, and you're going to throw him into a fire. Or you're going to be thrown with him into the fire. So she hesitated a little for a moment, and Allah Azza wa Jal allowed a miracle to happen for this woman, that he allowed the baby to speak. And so the baby spoke to his mother, and he said, "Oh mother, go ahead, for the torment of this life is much easier than the torment of the hereafter. And so what she did, she moved forward and she went into the fire without allowing his guards to take her and throw her in. Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, he said, 4 infants spoke at infancy, and we'll see that there's actually more than 4. Jesus, the son of Mary, the child in the story of Jurayj, everybody probably knows that, it's a famous story. If not, maybe one day we could talk about it. But anyhow, Joseph's witness, you remember Surah Yusuf, and the child that spoke as a miracle to show his innocence, and also the son of the hairdresser of Pharaoh. We'll explain a little bit further after we pray Salat al-Maghrib, and then we'll show the opposite side, which is Muslims who also Allah taught, the Prophet ﷺ taught us about them, and who were actually just people and just rulers, and recognized whether they could or could not handle leadership positions and whatnot. So we'll take a quick break, and inshallah we'll start back again after Salat al-Maghrib. I'll move this here.
Okay.
And then maybe we'll
I mean, we kind of did.
what is it? So we learn a few things from this particular narration. One, here is a person that Allah Azza wa Jal is encouraging us to kind of be like, where if you're standing in front of an oppressor, that you sit there and you speak the haqq, you speak the truth, even if it means that your own life may be at jeopardy here. By the way, something interesting, all of the previous Muslim nations before the Ummah Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they had to die upon saying the words La ilaha illallah. They had to. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that was one of the things that Allah alleviated on his Ummah, which is that, for example, if someone told them, say that Jesus is the Son of God or I'm going to kill you. Islam, in the ruling and the Sharia of the time of Muhammad ﷺ onward, if you lied to save your life, this is okay, by the way. But the previous nations, no. That's why you hear about the people of the ditch. She's also one of the ones who her son spoke to her when he was about to be, those whole group of people when they were going into the ditch in the Quran, the story that it mentioned. And he also spoke not to worry, Mom, this won't even feel except like a pinch. They all had to die like that upon saying the statement, La ilaha illallah. And something very interesting, now you recognize this is a blessing from Allah Azza wa Jal, that you are created in this time, and you came on earth in this time and not before. So that's alone a blessing in and of itself. So we mentioned also that a few children spoke when they were young. Does this mean that there's a contradiction? Because if the Prophet ﷺ mentioned in one narration, 3 spoke when they were children. 3 spoke when they were children. Jesus, the son of Mary, the son of the time of Jurayj, the child at the time of the story of Jurayj, and also the one who rejected his mother's supplication. But here we hear another one, and then you hear the witness at the time of Yusuf, and then you hear even a 6th one, which is, bless you, or alhamdulillah, I didn't hear you say alhamdulillah, sorry. And then the last one, which is the people of ditch, because it's from the sunnah not to say yarhamukallah, just so you know. It's not you being mean. They don't want to say it, too bad. That's okay. You're free to do as you will. But anyhow, 6, so we have 6. So what does that mean when you combine the narrations? That's like saying, in my class last week, 3 students were the top. Does that mean out of all the students I've ever taught, only 3 were the top? No, it means out of that class. So what does that say? It's like the statement, it's a generality, meaning all of the prophets received prophethood at what age?
40.
Yes, you know this. These are little things we need to know. All right, 40 years old, the Prophet ﷺ said all prophets received wahi, which is the message from Jibreel, with the exception of...
Yahya.
Yeah, who else? Who said?
Oh.
Yusuf. How do you know Yusuf?
Because his father told him.
His father told him. It was interesting, yeah. When did wahi come to him? See, there's no, when he was in the bottom of the cave.
Well.
Oh, okay.
In the well.
In the well, I'm sorry, cave. Okay, who else? Prophet Yahya. When?
What is it?
When?
Well, basically in the Quran it says when Prophet Zakaria, I forgot the exact narration, but basically,
That one I don't know. So maybe you're right. I don't know.
but
I don't know everything.
Basically in the Quran it says that Prophet Zakaria would have a son who would also be from the Salihin, I believe, Surah Maryam.
See, that one, interesting, what we ulama took from this ayah is that Allah named Yahya himself. So there's certain prophets that Allah Azza wa Jal gave them their name directly. But that could be one, I've never heard of that one honestly. But also Isa alayhi salam. Okay, those are the two I know about. I don't claim to know everything. So maybe you're right. Allahu A'lam. Do some research on
Didn't
that.
Yahya die at like 12 years old?
Yahya died young, yeah. And Allah Azza wa Jal cursed those people at the time. Yeah, because what they did to him. Now.
Actually, over Ramadan, I heard an interesting interpretation of some ayat from Surah Maryam, and it never explicitly said in the entire hadiths or the Quran where it says that Prophet Yahya ever died. It's biblical that he did die, but it's never like mentioned in Islam. So I heard an interpretation from Sheikh Assaf.
MashaAllah.
Yeah, so he said that there's a possibility that he actually never died and he's in the heavens with Prophet Isa.
That I'm sure he died. That's the one. Yeah. When we study, if you study a book by Ibn Kathir, Qisas al-Anbiya, I can get it for you next week about the narration. It might be Israeliyat that about how they killed him, but we're 100% sure he's dead. The only one we know that is up in the samawat that is coming back is Isa, unless his interpretation is he's partnering with him, coming with him, tag teaming the return. Could be. You never know.
Yeah,
Partners are nice.
we never know that, but I can definitely get you the
Yeah, yeah.
interpretation, but also there is another
Crossovers.
hadith where the Prophet when he
Sallallahu
went
alaihi wasallam.
for Isra and Mi'raj, when he came back, he was describing to the Sahaba like who he saw in each heaven.
Yeah.
And on the fourth heaven, he saw both Prophet Isa and Prophet Yahya. So I don't know, maybe that's an indication. But back
What
to-
about the other prophets he saw? So
yeah,
they're
that's-
alive too?
Yeah, no, obviously. But,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, we would have to have something explicit. By default, all insan, all human beings die. So the exception we have is Isa, and not that he's not going to die, except that Allah delayed his death, is all.
Yeah.
But that's the only one we know of. So then in Islam, we take the asl. Never forget this, by the way. This is a good rule for everyone. That anytime we know that there's a default ruling in Islam, that default ruling holds unless we're told otherwise. Like, for example, we know children do not speak at an infant age. We've been given exception, which in these narrations we have up to 6 authentically reported. And then we know that prophethood has been sealed with Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If someone claims to have prophethood, they contradict Allah and His Messenger. So what evidence do you have? They have to have miracles, things like that. And not just that. Also, we know that all prophets received wahi at 40. These kind of general rules. And we know that the exceptions, the 2 that I know about, maybe there's a 3rd, which is Isa and Yusuf alayhi salam. So these are something that what we were told. So these are but the default rule is we would say, oh, then what about Adam? Some scholars said that when Allah fashioned Adam, He fashioned him as a rajul. So he never was a little baby growing up. So that's what that means. So he also was created year 1 as an older man. So someone can make the argument, well, maybe he was also a prophet of that at year 1. You see, things like that. But we have to have evidence to make an exception to the rule. So maybe he did, Allahu A'lam. And then maybe forward me the lecture, inshallah. Definitely, it's always excellent to see differences of opinion because it broadens a person's scope in learning. Very, very important to do that, by the way.
I mean, aren't prophets' deaths pretty fluid?
As in what?
Or isn't death for prophets pretty fluid in the first place? Like it's not really as permanent as for most people.
100%
Like,
permanent. What is
Musa,
going
for
on?
example, I've heard
Yeah.
before that when Allah destroyed the mountain, Musa died on the spot, but then came back to life.
No, I don't know a single scholar who said he died. single. In all of the interpretations of the verse, I don't know a single exegist or tafsir that says he died at the spot. Fainted, coma, slept, woke up, none, zero said died. We know the Prophet, some came back, like which is the Prophet that Allah Azza wa Jal allowed him to die and come back?
Uzair?
Uzair. Yeah, you know, and even the people at his time took him to be a god, son of God. Some of a small group of Jews in the history said that Uzair ibn Allah mentioned that, but it doesn't seem that they carried on that teaching. But there was a people in their history, and some Jewish rabbis will tell you the same thing. There was a group that they believed that such a thing. But from what I know, and I have Jewish friends, none of them actually believe that God has a son today. But Allah is even showing you that everything, Allah is aware of everything, and He's showing you that even in their history, they did have this in there. Yeah. But other than that, like we said, there has to be evidence for it. So we have evidence that Uzair was put to death and resurrected. To watch him, to teach him a miracle that he went through. Here it is. Something also very, very important is about having justice in Islam. There's a verse in the Quran that the scholars of law actually said this is one of the statements in history that is one of the most prolific statements on justice that has ever been documented, which is in Surah An-Nisa, verse 135. Never forget this, by the way. Allah Azza wa Jalla says in Surah An-Nisa, verse 135, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا كُونُوا قَوَّامِينَ بِالْقِسْطِ شُهَدَاءِ لِلَّهِ وَلَوْ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَوْ الْوَالِدَيْنَ وَالْأَقْرَبِينَ. That Allah Azza wa Jalla says, O you who believe, O you have believed, be persistently standing firm in justice. This is Allah instructing all the Muslimin to witness for Allah on earth. Remember the Prophet ﷺ said, if you recall what this means, just so nobody's all taking this into another weird realm. When a funeral passed by, there was a group of people who were saying bad things about this person. And they were saying so many bad things about this person, the Prophet ﷺ said, he deserves what he gets. Then another funeral passed by, and they were saying so many nice things about this person, they were saying things like that, and the Prophet ﷺ said, and he will get what he deserves. So they paused the Prophet ﷺ, they said, Ya Rasulullah, they said, Yani, this first wretched person passed by, and you said he'll get what he deserves, as they said, as these people said about him. And then you said the same thing about the next person who was a righteous person who passed. And he said, you are Allah, the witnesses of Allah on earth. Meaning what? Allah doesn't need your eyes and ears on earth. No, that you know people. You know who's the one who used to rip people off, who used to backbite everybody in the room, who used to cause so many problems, who used to steal, who used to cheat, who used to fornicate. You know this amongst yourselves. And so, then it's no secret that on the day of judgment, if you see them being punished, you're like, well, I knew it. I saw him. He still owes me $100 actually. Jahannam wa bi'sal masir. And you're wishing very bad for them. And so, you know people in general, generally speaking. So that's something also very interesting. But I don't want you to get too carried away to be on the other side of the spectrum, where you only care about what people think of you. Then you ruin all of your deeds, you ruin your good deeds, you ruin your intention and everything. Always, like what Allah Azza wa Jalla told us, He taught us through the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam what? Always try to gain a love of Allah, and Allah Azza wa Jalla will allow the people to have a love for you. That's your number one goal in life. That's it. Even Shiri's having understanding that. Yeah. And then Allah Azza wa Jalla said, إن يكن غنيا أو فقيرا فالله أولى بهما. And then, so wait a minute, sorry. Be witnesses and stand firm in justice, witnesses for Allah, even if it be against yourselves. That is a very difficult thing to do. I'm telling you it's hard. I'm telling you firsthand it's hard. I'm not telling you because I've accomplished it. It's on my, my bucket list and it's done. It is really hard. You get in trouble at work, right? You came late. This is hard. I'm telling you it's hard. You're going to see. You're not there yet. Why are you late? Well, you know that there's a train that was late. That could have been the train you were on, but it was not. That wasn't the train you were on. You were on the early train. Your train was on time. So you could say the train was late, but it wasn't your train. Be firm in justice. Don't lie, even if it be against yourselves, by the way. If you messed up, if you did something wrong, if you were going down the road, speeding, going 75 in a 50-mile-an-hour zone, and you got one of these gold little thingies that New Jersey's notorious for. By the way, it doesn't really exist too much outside of Jersey, just so you're all aware, by the way. And if you go real Midwest, you'll actually get arrested for bribing a police officer if you whip one of those things out. One of my customers, that actually happened to him. Yeah, true story, I kid you not. He actually was pulled over, I think it was in Arizona or Kansas or one of these nice little people states are. And he gets pulled over, and he goes, you know, I'm sorry, I was going a little over. You know, my brother-in-law is a police officer, if you don't mind just giving me a break. The guy actually pulls his gun. He tells him, turn the car off and get out of the car. You're under arrest for bribing a police officer. He said, excuse me, he said, anything you say can and will be held against you in the court of law. He said, get out of the car, sir. Kid you not, he got arrested. He stayed in there for like a few hours. They got him out. I said, look, this is what we do. He said, yeah, that corrupt state you're from, we could care less how it happens and what goes down there. These get out of jail free cards, that doesn't work out here. So, and it's pretty interesting, right? You know, my uncle is actually, mashallah, a lead detective, and I was in the car with one of my teachers, and he thought I was like, you know, in training in the police academy. I had this massive badge, you know, you guys know which one I'm talking about, and it's just sitting there in the window. And what's worse than that is at the time I had a Dodge Charger. So he, you know, anybody who I'm going through, they would just move out of my way. And this is my younger idiot days when I used to speed. Alhamdulillah, you know those insurance policies, the reason that it's very high at your age right now, it makes sense, by the way. Perfect sense. Like I gotta tell them like nail on the head, they figured it out. The moment you get married, the moment you have kids, all that speeding garbage just goes like literally downhill. But nonetheless, even if it be against yourself. So I'm sitting there and my teacher asks me, and he says, oh, are you like in training? And I said, no, it's my uncle, he's an officer. He says, so what does that do? I said, well, you know, anybody who pulls me over, I don't get a ticket. So he nodded down, and he was like almost like embarrassed for me. Because, you know, honestly, as Muslims, you're like breaking the law and get away free with that. Muslims shouldn't be doing that, really. Wallahi, since that day, I took that badge down and I never put it back up in my car. Still in my trunk. People offered me money for it, by the way. And I'm like, absolutely not. What are you going to say? How are you related to me? They're like, you know, we're all related, this. So nonetheless, and then Allah Azza wa Jalla says, وَلَوْ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِكُمْ. That is so hard, that you have to be honest and just. Meaning, if you're going to get yourself into trouble by answering a particular way, you still answer that way. That is difficult, people. That is difficult. What's even then, there's a tartib here. That's the most difficult thing you can do. What's next? Look at what Allah Azza wa Jalla says. أَوْ الْوَالِدَيْنِ وَالْأَقْرَبِينَ. That Allah Azza wa Jalla then says, even if it be against your own mother and father, even your own relatives, and obviously the nearest going outward, even if you had to say you were in the car. I know this is going to be hard, man. Pay this, and these are little mini ones, right? We're not talking about major stuff like murder and all this other things that people, and stealing and all sorts of criminal activity. May Allah Azza wa Jalla protect us from doing that. But you're in the passenger seat and your mother was driving. Now this is a problem. So the officer turns to you, son, was she speeding? Now what? Walak, wallahi, I dare you. You'll sleep outside. Go ahead.
Sleep?
You see?
Yeah, perfectly.
Now that's a moment of truth right there. Yup, she was actually going 75. She was laughing about it. Thank you, son. Ticket. You see? This is a Bismillah.
Do you have to answer, or can you just like?
Don't answer. Exactly, that's another
Can you
option.
just be like,
Maybe you don't
my rights
answer.
to remain silent?
I'm not gonna lie. The ayah here says you answer. We want to follow the ayah here. I mean, maybe we're silent here. I'm not sure, but I'm telling you, it's difficult. This ayah is very difficult to implement in your life. You see, but as Muslims, you see the kind of image and the kind of the leadership, that the example we're setting, if we actually were to just follow this one verse, you know how many people would become Muslim? It would, you know, yeah.
Sorry, can you just repeat what surah and ayah?
Surah An-Nisa, verse 135. Yes. Okay. Just so you're aware, by the way, you think that these Muslims think this ayah is only prolific? This verse actually hangs outside of the Harvard School of Law. Do you know this?
Nope.
This verse actually hangs outside the Harvard School of Law. Yeah, and the reason is because they have all sorts of things, like another statement, I believe they claim it's by Cyrus the Great, which we believe is Dhul Qarnayn in the Quran. But nonetheless, keep it going. Yani Muslim after another. Who else you got? Jesus, we got him too. Yani you might as well just convert it to the Islamic School of Law or something like that. But nonetheless, the only shameful part is we're not really following this. We're not really following this verse. And then Allah Azza wa Jalla says, إِن يَكُنْ غَنِيًّا أَوْ فَقِيرًا فَاللَّهُ أَوْلَى بِهِمَا. Then he says, whether one is rich or poor, Allah is more worthy of both. And why is Allah mentioning this? Because a lot of times we do things like this for money and power. Especially money. And Allah is telling you that Allah has more rights over that. Do not lose your akhirah for the sake of this dunya. And then Allah Azza wa Jalla says, فَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا الْهَوَىٰ أَن تَعْدِلُوا. Then he says, so do not follow your personal inclination, lest you not be just. And then Allah Azza wa Jalla says, وَإِن تَلُوا أَوْ تُعْرِضُوا فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ خَبِيرٌ. That Allah Azza wa Jalla says, and if you distort your testimony or refuse to give it, then indeed Allah is ever with what you do acquainted. Refuse to give it. So maybe, I don't know, maybe we just answer, or maybe you give advice to your mom, let's slow down, right? The rushing is from the shaitan and whatnot. So this is so important that we learn as Muslims to, one, do not do things that you, in order to gain power and leadership like this daughter of Pharaoh did. Because she wouldn't have tried to blackmail her like that, like Dr. Umar al-Ashqar rahimahullah, he mentions in his book commentating about this narration, and he even says that in politics people need to blackmail other people. And the reason is because that's the only way they're able to get people to do favors and get them to do things that allows them to increase in the ranks. And being in the palace of Pharaoh, this daughter of his needs to climb ranks as well. So she needs certain things, and she needs eyes and ears. What did my father say here? What was the business talked about over here? They need this kind of spies be placed for them in different areas so that they can increase in their ranks. And this is exactly how Allah is telling us not to do. This is what we shouldn't be doing as Muslims. Because if you don't, do you think, honestly, and I really mean it, do you think actually Gaddafi or Mubarak or some of these other people actually believe they're tyrants? No. They actually don't. They think they're, yeah, I'm just for my country. I'm doing good things. And don't think, by the way, we're too far from that. Being born and raised in America, these people do things in the name of their nationality. Our country does things in the name of their own religion. And their religion is democracy. You probably never thought about it. You think it's a political movement. It's not. When they sit there and they have collateral damage, and it's called 100,000 humans. Humans! You know, if you were to kill a dog in Jersey, you'd probably do more jail time than killing a bum. You know, it's a shame, because this is the way that they've shaped society. But as Muslims, we don't have to accept that. We're not less American because we challenge that you've had collateral damage of 10,000 or 1 million, and that's unacceptable. That's absolutely unacceptable. With technology and precision and all of this, you should get your target in 10 seconds with accuracy. But for some reason, we're old school men in boots on the ground, and we're going commando style out there. And for what reason? We're going to bring democracy to this particular place. And then you hear them on the 10 o'clock news. It's ridiculous. I would love to hear one Muslim person, a leader, to sit there and say, we're sending an army to place XYZ. We're going to bring Islam to country ABC. Oh my God, it's spread by the sword, it's spread by the tank, it's spread by the AK. What happened? You guys have to be a lot more equipped, knowledgeable, to understand that if you are not going to shape the future of this country, then guess what? Who will? And notice something, and the last thing we'll leave off on is that Allah Azza wa Jal mentions in the Quran that Allah gives victory to those who are just. And Allah does not attribute a religion to that, by the way. Here's that. That's very interesting. And you wonder why this particular country, for the last 300 years, was actually leading the world. Because us Muslims failed at being just with one another and people in the world. So Allah stripped us of that leadership, and He handed it to people who were. And believe it or not, if you look throughout history, there were certain things. Yeah, our history is not that great in this country. But at the end of the day, you read some of these court cases, they stood for justice. But a lot of other times, we're on the brink right now where we're not so much doing that. You read court cases now and you just say, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. That person's innocent, definite. That person's been bombarded, blackmailed, in X, Y, and Z. And what are we going to do about it? My grass is green and it's landscaped. And my kids have a backyard to play in. And they got full rides to college. That's what we care about now. We became suburban Muslims. We became Muslims who like a nice little house with whatever picket fence, with whatever nice green grass, and you just peek at neighbors who are not mowing the lawn, and you're weirded out by them, and your problem is now groundhogs, and you're worried about them chewing into the basement foundation. That's our now problem, living in this country. Rather than Allah Azza wa Jal telling us what's the real issue that we should be standing up. And the reason this is so important for us in this age group to understand, you will, if Allah Azza wa Jal gives you life, you will shape the future of this country. How many of you plan on moving out? Canada's looking pretty good. Huh? Where do you want to go? Where do you plan on going? You see, think about it. Some of you may, that's fine. But the majority, 99.9 of you are staying here. So that means you ought to shape this particular place for the better in the future of the generations to come. May Allah Azza wa Jal allow us to be that, and let us learn and benefit from this hairdresser who was at the time of Pharaoh. May Allah Azza wa Jal have mercy on her. And may Allah Azza wa Jal allow us to meet her in paradise and smell that the Prophet ﷺ smelled on Isra wal Mi'raj. If I said anything offensive, please forgive me. That's not my intention. If I said anything good, that's from Allah Azza wa Jal, and I ask that He reward us all. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Jazakumullah khair. Does anybody have any questions? No? Yes. Huh? What does yarhamukumullah? Yarhamni warhamkumullah?
How you said it's sunnah not to say it.
Oh, can I clarify? Someone sneezed, okay? And after you sneeze, it's from the sunnah to say Alhamdulillah. All praise is due to Allah. And then it's from the sunnah for those who hear that to respond to say Yarhamukullah. And it's from the sunnah to respond back and say Yahdikumullah yuslah banukum. Now, the Prophet ﷺ, it happened in his time where one companion, he sneezed, he said Alhamdulillah, he said Yarhamukullah. Another companion sneezed, he didn't say it to him, so he got upset. He said, Ya Rasulullah, you didn't give me this dua. He said, you didn't say Alhamdulillah. So it's not like you're less, you're mean or something like that. You didn't say Alhamdulillah. So I say something else. I say, bless you. Yani, bless you. Good for you. Bless you from who? I don't know. All blessings. Naam. Correct. Yeah. That's why. Just say you need a tissue. I keep tissues in my bag. In my pocket, so I don't know, say, do you need a tissue? Or whatever they want to say. Interesting, by the way, yarhamukallah. That is like a mercy upon Allah. Notice the language that people say in English, it's bless you. They simply just hacked God from it. You know, it's just interesting nonetheless. Yes, somebody had another question. Yes?
Oh, no, so you said that the reason you said bless you is because you didn't hear her say it.
Yes, it's a habit in my work environment that I just say that. So because a Muslim should always have good etiquette. It's not yarhamukallah. Bless you, yani. Bless you in your money and your life, whatever. It's good for you. Bless everyone, I mean. So, yeah, but from the sunnah, if you're going to say, may Allah have mercy upon you, then that they should say, Alhamdulillah. They should say that statement. Yeah. You have to pick these habits up, people. You're not going to live in this room your whole life. There's other non-Muslims out there.
Really?
Beware. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I'll see you guys next week.